we have a further break in our systematic dismantling of COVID protections, another loss of our tools that we have. This author bravely talks about their own experience where they got infected with COVID over the holiday and had to go through this dilemma of do I fly, do I not fly? And they started like Shakespeare. To fly or not to fly, that is the question. That is the dilemma that travelers with COVID, including myself, face these days when the other option is paying hundreds of dollars to switch your flight. And then during what the government considered the COVID pandemic, which is still ongoing, but during that period of time, the decision was made for you. If you had a positive test, you were not flying. Today, however, in 2023, those rules are relaxed, where flyers with COVID must make hard decisions, and some airlines aren't offering any relief on the cost of changing flights, even if you prove that you have COVID. So it's like, what do you do? Do you plan these things out weeks in advance? Like, all right, so this is what I'm going to do if I get COVID, because the author is saying how they booked this trip in September and they weren't thinking about it back then, where during the government's considered active pandemic, airlines eliminated the cost for changes of flights during the government's pandemic, but now fare differences are in place. Choose a different day, especially in busy peak periods like over the holiday, and the price can become hundreds of dollars more expensive to switch. And when the author was calling, trying to figure this out, like, hey, what do I do? The JetBlue was saying, no, we're not going to reimburse you. And then they had this precious little gem right here, where the JetBlue agent told me the last thing that the author expected, I could fly with the virus, but she suggested that I did use a precaution, a face covering, where the official statement is that if you've been exposed to COVID, influenza, other communicable diseases, feel symptoms, or test positive, the CDC recommends you don't travel for days, but there's no actual what do you do when this happens, and there's no working with the customer to help public health in this matter anymore. And people that are trying to be responsible are now confronted with, all right, so if I try to be responsible, this is now going to cost me hundreds of dollars, where airlines are shifting their public health burden onto the customers themselves, where they're now expecting people to act responsibly and not expose others if they're sick, but they also know that many COVID-positive travelers are flying on their flights, and some, but not all, of whom choose to use a face mask while flying. And the CDC director is basically being like, yeah, I know this is a hard choice, but please don't share your germs with others, but not actively coming up with the solution, like mandating that airlines have to compensate for this. So again, we have another chink in the armor.